Hey guys, today I'm going to start tanning a few hides. A lot of different things out there on the internet, a lot of different material to read on that. This is how I do it. I'm by no means an expert. It took me a few tries to at least get it somewhat acceptable, so this is how I do it. As you can see, I have my main ingredients here. Now I use the Tasco Rittel brand, and there's a specific reason I use this, and that reason is because it's the cheapest. Well, not the cheapest. The cheapest is probably the orange bottle. But I get this at F&T. I get it with all my other supplies I need for trapping. The whole idea here is to get the hides ready to accept the tan, and this is the tan I'm going to use. So there's a whole process here of basically preparing the hide in order for this chemical to absorb into the skin to give it a nice soft white hide. I'm going to start with skunks. My plan is to make a pair of mittens out of skunk with the skunk stripes down the back side of the mitten, and then on the cuff I'd like to do some trim. I'm not sure if I'll use, I have a badger that I'd like to use for the trim, or I have a couple coyotes that probably aren't going to be worth very much. I might use that for the trim, but I want to get started on these skunk. So these skunk have been sitting out in my garage. This one with the first side out has been hanging in my garage for at least 2 years. It could even be three and a half years it's been sitting out there. Seems to be okay. The hair doesn't seem to be slipping. I did pull some hair off the tail, but I think that's just because of where it got cut. You always lose a little bit of hair there. And these two skunk hides have been sitting in my garage, I think, since last season. So they've been out there in the summertime. All these have been out there in the summertime when it's 100 degrees outside. They still seem to be in good shape. But we want a nice soft result. White is good. So we're going to give it a shot here. So the first thing we need to do is, especially in any case, but especially since these have been sitting around for a long time, we want to relax them. We want to rehydrate them, so get some moisture back into the skin. If we were just to flesh these, say we caught this thing yesterday, fleshed it last night, we could go ahead and throw this straight into the next. We could skip this step. We could go straight into the next step. But we want to relax this, and so we're gonna relax that by putting them in some cold water and adding some salt. Alright, we're just going to add cold water. Some of these skins are turned first side out, some are skin side out, doesn't matter. I'm going to take my salt. Now that's about 1.21 gigawatts of salt there. That should do it. So I'm going to let these hydrate in here for, you know, somewhere between 1 and 24 hours. Depends on what kind of mood I'm in, and if I forget it, I'll come back and check on them as soon as I remember in about an hour or so and kind of get a feel for it, see how they're doing. I will have to put some kind of a weight on there to keep it from floating to the top. These old growlers are good for something. Buffalo Commons, not too bad. Oh, we got Laughing Sun. They're pretty good too. There we go. We'll let that set for a couple hours and see what we have. About 4 hours. It looks like they've softened up quite a bit. Yeah. We don't want to leave them in any longer than we have to. We don't want to cause any hair slippage. But this slightly resembles what it feels like after it's fleshed. It's pretty limber, pretty soft. That's what we're after. I'm going to go ahead and dump the water out and start with the degreaser. Mix up a solution for that. Be right back. I also purchased the super solvent, and that's supposed to act as a degreaser and kind of a relaxer, but mostly a degreaser. So you know how coon especially and skunks have a lot of fat and grease on them. It's supposed to help with that. So I have instructions for the super solvent. Go to this taxidermyarts.com. They're the kind of the main suppliers for this brand, and they have a lot of different instructions out there. So this is telling us after relaxing the skins and prior to placing them into the pickle, which we'll get to, wash them in the super solvent for 30 minutes. Okay. Alright, we got the water drained out. I'm going to go ahead and flip this one skunk that's got the fur side out. I'm going to flip it to skin side out. And the reason for that is I want this degreaser to work on the skin side, because that's where the fat and grease is going to be. Alright, so we got our skins there. We're going to add cold water. Okay, I'm going to say that is roughly 2 gallons of water, maybe a little bit more. And our instructions say to use 4 ounces of super solvent degreaser to every gallon. So I'm going to add about 10 ounces. And this is by weight. Okay, that's 3 1/3 ounces. So I guess if we do that 3 times, that should get us our 10 ounces. And I'm just gonna mix it up with my gloves. The instructions say to leave that in for a half hour. The skins have been in the degreaser formula for about a half hour. Stuff smells kind of good. Should mention that this step is probably optional. The other thing you could probably do is just use borax or Dawn dish soap. The idea is to remove some of that extra grease on there and to open up the pores of the skin a little bit. I'm sure there's somebody out there yelling at their TV or computer screen because I'm doing this. So, first time I've used this product, I don't think it was ridiculously expensive. Dump this out, rinse the skins off, and start with the next step. We got our hides rehydrated. We put some degreaser in there to degrease them a little bit. They're fairly soft, fairly pliable, workable. Now it's time for the next step, is the most important step, and that is the pickle. And the pickle is basically a solution that's real salty and low pH, and what that does is it kills off all the bacteria in there. I'm going to reuse this same bucket I'm using. It seems to be a good size. And we need to add hot water. And the reason we need to add hot water is because we want to absorb as much salt into the water as we can. And the hotter the water, the more salt that will dissolve. So as a rough guesstimate, do about a pound of salt per gallon of water. And I hope to use about 2.5 gallons of water, so I need about, say, 3 pounds of salt. One of these is about 1.5 pounds, so I'll need about 2 of these salt containers. So the hot water helps to mix up the salt, but we don't want to put the hide back into this as when it's hot. We need to let it cool off first. In addition to the salt, we need to make this thing very acidic. And one of the cheapest ways to do that is to use citric acid. Get it at the grocery store, Menards. It's usually with the canning stuff. And what we're aiming for is to get this down to a pH of 1.5 to 2. So we add about 1.21 gigahertz of citric acid. We'll start with that. I'm going to take some pH indicator paper. This stuff is not available locally anywhere. You can find pH test paper for like fish aquariums, but they don't go down to the 1 and 2 pH that we need to. So you take a strip, throw it in. Great. No, I lost it. Where did it go? There it is. I compare it with our chart, and it's between a 2 and a 3, I would say. So I'm going to add some more, but we're getting close. Yeah, we're getting real close. That's between 1 and 2. However, this pH is going to change with time. When we add the furs in, it's going to change a little bit, and just with time it's going to change, so we need to monitor that. So we'll wait for this to cool off, give it 5-10 minutes, and I'll add the skunk hides into it. And so this is considered the pickle. Low pH, a lot of salt. And we will keep this in here for 2 or 3 days. Alright, these have been in the pickle for 3 days. Take a look at what we have. It should be kind of plump, and these are not. But that's probably got something to do with the fact that they were in my garage for a couple of years. And the skins are thin-skinned, so maybe skunks don't show that as well. But when I squeeze in there with my fingernail, it should leave the indent of my fingernail, and it's not doing that. But these are really thin-skinned, so I know the pH has been right at between 1 and 2 for 3 days, so I'm going to go ahead and take them out. Alright, I got rid of the pickle, added some fresh water, added a few tablespoons of baking soda, measured the pH, it's about 7, between 7 and 8. So we're just going to mix this up a little bit. Put some weight in there again. And this is just to neutralize the skins. And we'll leave that sit for about 20 minutes and come back. It's been a good 20 minutes in the neutralization bath. Squeeze them out good. We're getting to the end of the process. Basically, we want these to dry out slightly, so they're about half dry. And then we go ahead and apply the tanning solution. Okay, so we got our 3 skins dried here. They're fairly dry, and I just realized that for this recipe, for this tanning solution, that I wouldn't have had to dry them, but it was an okay thing because it was okay because I wasn't sure when I was going to get back to finishing the job here. But we're getting to the end of the process. There is a recipe on here. We're going to mix our solution first. Add water. Stir well, and then we want a pH of 4. Kind of monitor the pH for that for that 4, and it says to leave them in the tan solution for about 14 to 18 hours. Alright, the furs have been in here for, it's probably been 24 hours already. Yeah, it's been about 24 hours. The instructions say 14 to 18 hours, but I broke the rules on that. So I'm just gonna squeeze everything out of there. Alright, I'm just gonna let them hang out here for a little bit and let them drain out. Just to get some of that excess tanning solution out of there. I'll leave them there for half hour or so and check back. Alright, he's been kind of draining out for a half hour or so. Now the instructions say to apply tanning oil on these and let them sweat. I don't have tanning oil, but what I do have is neat's foot oil, which is oil from a cow's foot. I didn't know that. I'm going to apply that. I don't know if it'll do any good, but I figure it can't hurt it. I'm just going to use my fingers to apply that. Should help to soften it up, I would think. We'll give it a whirl. Alright, then I'm going to turn them first side out so that it's skin on skin. Make them sweat a little bit. Hope it'll absorb some of that oil. This is the first time I've seen these first side out since we started, basically. So I'm curious if the white got any whiter in our process. This one's definitely not white. I think maybe a little borax might fix that. The skins are fairly soft, and they should get softer. These have been sitting skin on skin in the neat's foot oil for about 3 hours. I'm going to go ahead and flip them, and they are nice and soft. If they stay this soft, that'll be nice. They're still wet, but we'll see what they're like when they're dry. Hopefully they're this soft when the process is done, which is getting close. I'm just going to flip them so they dry a little bit faster. They are beginning to look like a finished product, but there's one more step. Finally, on our last step. These have been sitting out to dry for 3 or 4 days. So what we want to do is to break the fibers now, and I'll try to show you here. When I stretch the skin out here, you can see how it's going to turn white. There you can kind of get an example. But instead of stretching it like that, I'm going to try to break this a different way. Here we have our finished product. They all kind of came out a little bit different based on the thickness of their skin. The thicker the skin, the softer they are, and they'll get softer with time. The more I work with them, the softer they'll get. This one with the tail on it had the thickest skin, and that is definitely the softest. I hope this video isn't too intimidating. It really is an easy process. There's nothing complicated about it. It's just a matter of following all the right steps. So give it a try if you haven't tried it before. Here we're at the North Dakota State Capitol Heritage Center. It's a pretty cool place, nice museum inside. If you ever get a chance, check it out. Thanks for watching, have a good one.